Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Sya Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutade Srimadi Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishes Sunyavadi Praskita De Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayodhirayat Nashna Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatiyatam Ashoki Bhaktir Bhavadi Naistiki Nigamakapadurgarayam Param Shukamakaram Rita Savitam Pibata Bhagatam Rasamayam Mahora Hori Sikabuvi Babakaham Krishna Sadam Apagate Dharmaguni He Sarakaro Nastadi Samisa Parana Kodunodita. So I missed you all. It's been all the way since Wednesday. From Wisdom Wednesday, we had a hiatus. We're back now to, what is it, Motivational Monday. Thank you for joining us, Anjali, on MM. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Something just happened here. It's not good. Hold on a second. I lost the entire Facebook feed. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Jimmy. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Bhakti Caprice. Thank you. Thanks, Bhakti Caprice, for giving your comments yesterday during the Salt Lake City Zoom call. Rakesh, Rupa Manjari. Good morning to all of you. Jean, good morning. I have to bring you up to date. After our Wisdom Wednesday session, it had been my 74th birthday. But they say when you have lemons, make lemonade. So in coincidence with the birthday, we did a fundraiser through Facebook so we could replace one of our billboards on I-15. And also we're doing caulking up and around the roof of the veranda to keep the birds from nesting in there. We kind of are soft-hearted. And in fact, I'm going to talk about how devotees are friendly to all living entities, including the animals, but allowing them to nest in the veranda and then make a lot of mess, which gives a negative impression to tourists. We have to make a decision between being kind to the birds and making a good impression on the human beings who can go back home, back to Godhead. So the birds are going to have to nest somewhere else other than the roof of the veranda. I'm sure they're versatile enough to find something. So those are the two projects that are going to end up. We had set as our goal 5,000. We thought that was an ambitious goal. But my gosh, within the first couple of days, we were right up there, about 3,500. And in the end, well, it's going on for 2 more days. So if you haven't got into the fund, there's still 2 more days to do it. But right now, we've broken our expectations. Our goal was 5,000. We went up to $5,512. Yay! Haribo. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yata Parta Danu Daya Yata Sriyabhijivanitirmatam. Wherever there's Krishna and wherever there's devotees like yourselves, there's opulence, there's favorability, there's morality, and there's victory. So we had the victorious fundraiser. We went over and above our best expectations. Now, as far as the birthday celebration itself is concerned, I got something for my birthday that I've never received before as a gift. Can you guess? My mommy gave me a pillow. Yeah, she figured my pillow wasn't good enough, and so she gave me a nice pillow. And the pillow was so soft that I actually stood up against a wall and put the pillow against the wall, and put my head in the pillow and took a short nap. That's how alluring the pillow was. And the other thing she gave me is a pair of slippers, because my wife and I, we live in the basement of the ashram. And it's very cool when it gets hot in the summer. It's a good, cool place to be. But in the winter, when it gets cold, the floors are pretty chilly, even when you have your stocking feet on. So she got me these nice, warm, insulated slippers, which are embroidered. The man on the left slipper, it says, the man, the myth. And on the right slipper, it says, the legend. And it's it's facing out, so it's facing the public. The man, the myth, and the legend. So pretty zany gifts for your 74th birthday. Okay, another thing I have to share with you is that even though we did 2 full sessions on this verse last week, we're not finished with it. We're still going to squeeze some more juice out of it. And so we're going back on this Motivational Monday to revisit. Thanks for joining us, John Malik. Very nice to see you. We're going to revisit this verse. If you're following us, this is the 38th verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. And this will be our 3rd successive morning of discussing it. Saveda data parabim parasya darantya vyoyasha yatanga pane yomaya santata yanavrita bhajeta tatpada sarojaganham. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the creator of the universe in his full glory. The first day that we discussed this, we referred to the Lord being described as who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, and that was, of course, the battlefield scene where Bhisma had promised that either he would kill Arjuna or Krishna would break his promise to be a non-combatant and take up a weapon in order to protect Arjuna. So Bhisma was successful in causing Krishna to break his promise. That when Bhisma was on the verge of killing Arjuna, Krishna lost it out of affection for his devotee, and he picked up a chariot wheel that had been knocked off of its chariot. He ran towards Bhisma to kill him, and just at that moment, the end of the day's hostilities. The hostilities came to an end that day with the sun going below the horizon. So Bhisma's life was spared. Well, that's the meaning, in case you just joined us now, why Krishna is referred to one who has the wheel of the chariot in his hand. Now, what it's asserted here is that undivided devotional service and only undivided, unmixed devotional service is going to free one from the miseries of material life and propel one back home, back to Godhead, from which we originally come. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is stated, and this is a key verse for all bhakti yogis, Anya Vilasita Sunyam Jnana Karimi Anavritam Anukulena Krishnana Bhaktina Uttama. So if anyone wants to execute devotional service, they must try to make it unalloyed, free from mental speculation, free from fruitive activities. We referred a few days ago to the Brahmins who were performing sacrifices nearby to where Krishna and Balaram were herding the cows during the time of their pastimes on earth. The friends of Krishna and Balaram asked the Brahmins if they could spare some food for Krishna and Balaram, and these Brahmins were so absorbed in fruitive activities, performing sacrifices to increase their good karma and to get elevation to the heavenly planets, they didn't care a fig for Krishna and Balaram. They didn't respond to the boys' request for a little donation of food. They didn't listen to them. They treated them as lower class cowherd boys. So even though they were Brahmins, they were very, very offensive. And that's why there are many statements that karma, nipuno, vipro, manta, tanta, visad, avaishnava guru sa nasyad vaishnava shopacho guru. If one's a Brahmin, but he hasn't got any attraction for Krishna, then he's not fit to be a spiritual master or a spiritual guide. On the other hand, even if one has been born in a family of dog eaters, but he knows and he can spread the science of Krishna consciousness, then he's to be accepted as a spiritual master. So what's indicated here is that one should be free from the desire for fruitive activities, free from speculating about the Lord. The Lord is a dokshaja. He's beyond the syllables and the words of the alphabet. You can spin out all kinds of polysyllabic words and make your intellectual theses, but you'll never capture Krishna with words. He's always playing hide and seek behind your words. The only way that you can capture Krishna is to serve him in loving devotional service. And then he being pleased by your service, reveals himself to the aspiring devotee. Therefore it is said, those who are rendering service unto Krishna directly, and directly means to do it under the guidance of a bona fide representative. Krishna himself says, people can't serve me directly. They serve, not me personally directly, but they serve me directly by serving my devotees. Acharya Mambigara Navamati Karichit Parja Shoganuradihi Sarva Deva Mayo Guru in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 17th chapter, 27th verse. Krishna says one should take the Acharya, the perfectly behaved and articulate devotee, as none other than my very, very self. One should not envy the devotee of the Lord. One should not think of him as an ordinary man, because that person can open the doors of the spiritual world for you. The spiritual master is considered to be more than the sum total of all the demigods. So when you hook up your chariot, when you associate with those who are favorable servitors of the Lord, then by the grace of the Lord, you can enter into the mysterious region of transcendence by the mercy of the Lord. And someone may say, well, why would someone who's chanting Hare Krishna and serving the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of the Lord, in fact, is more in the spiritual world than this material world, why would they take the time to teach me to walk, so to speak? And the answer is that they're friendly. Characteristic across the boards of pure devotees who are favorably serving the Lord is that they're very, very friendlily, if that's a word, disposed to all living beings. And all living beings, they see that there's a spiritual being inside of all bodies. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahma Gavi Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahma Gavi Hashtini Sune Chaiva Shapake Cha Pandita Samadarshinaha. Those who are awakened, who are serving the Lord favorably, see that all living beings emanate from the Lord. They're all his parts and parcels. We're all sons and daughters of the Lord. Sarvayonishu Kantya Murtiya Sambhava Tajma Brahma Mahadya Dir Aham Bija Pradapita. The Lord claims all living beings as his parts and parcels. He doesn't discriminate between souls that are in human bodies, or souls that are in demigods' bodies, or souls that are in animal or insect or reptile or aquatic bodies. Each and every soul is divine, and each and every soul is precious to the Lord. Prabhupada gave the example of a man having 10 sons, and 2 or 3 of his sons are doctors and lawyers, and another son has Down syndrome. The father loves this child with Down syndrome as much as he loves the doctors and lawyers. In fact, if you want to carry the analogy a little bit further, if the Down syndrome child is more dependent upon the father and gives his love more single-pointedly, more concentratedly, then the father's going to respond perhaps even more to the Down syndrome child than he does to the well-accomplished, articulate, successful, affluent doctor and lawyers who are his sons. In the 7th canto, 14th chapter, if you're out there, Prashant, 9th verse, Narada Muni says to Yudhishthir, Mrugasta karamarkaku sarasupkakamakshanam atmarat putavad pased terisham antaram kiyat. Narad tells Yudhishthir, because Yudhishthir is going to be the king, and the term is used praja. Praja means the citizenry. Now in Vedic times, and for a Vedic king, the citizens were not just the human beings. The citizens were all the animals. Anyone who had taken birth in that country was a citizen. Our current leader basically focuses on his own narrow segment of the human population as his followers. He's always doubling down on his own followers. And those who don't agree with him, they're labeled as radicals, anarchists. There are suggestions that they're traitors, they should be thrown into jail. This narrow-mindedness, this playing to your own constituency, is indicative of the lowest level of the mode of ignorance. But the enlightened, broad-minded kings of the Vedic times not only served equally all different categories and nationalities and genders and ethnicities of human beings, but they expanded their concern and their protection and patronage to all living beings, any praja, any living being that had taken birth in the land. Therefore, Narada says to Yudhishthira, who's ascending to the throne, Mrigastha Karamarkaku Sadashib Kakirma Admaram Pudavat Pashad Tere Shamantaram Kriya. One should treat all animals such as deer, camels, asses, monkeys, mice, birds, and flies exactly as one's own son. He goes on to say how little difference there is between children and these innocent animals. Many of you are parents out there. You've seen your small children play for hours and hours perfectly compatibly, perfectly happily with the animals. And that's because when children come into the human form of life, the likelihood is that they've just transitioned from a lower animal body. And so until they get education, until they get cultivation, until they nurture their spiritual selves and awaken self-realization, their consciousness is not any different, really, than the consciousness of the animals. And that's why they get along so well. Thanks for joining us, Michelle. Nice to have seen you Sunday at the temple in Salt Lake City. Marcia has jumped on board. Appreciate your joining us. Ayelen, welcome. Welcome, one and all. Now, another story about devotees' solicitousness for animals occurs in the Antya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the nectar of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. This is in the first chapter, 17th and 18th verses. Thanks for joining us, Govinda. Govinda does the morning program in Salt Lake City, which goes from 7 till 7:35 or 7:40. So he joined us a little late. Chaitan Prakash, Hare Krishna. So we find this verse in the Antya Lila. Eka kukura. Kukura means dogs. Dogs are pretty comfortable in America, but generally speaking, dogs are overlooked in India. Dogs are, for the most part, very badly treated in India, but that's not the case with this dog and with this devotee whose name is Shivananda Sain. Eke kukura kale Shivananda Sanaya Bhakshadiya Lana Chale Karya Palane. Every year, after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, he was originally going to go to Vrindavan, but his mother, who lived in Bengal, couldn't bear the thought of him being so far away. So she asked him to alter his plans, and instead of going to Vrindavan, go to Jagannath Puri, which was just a few days' walk south of their home in Bengal. Lord Chaitanya agreed to do that. So he spent basically the last 24 years of his life, essentially, with his home base at Puri. And every year, the devotees from Bengal would organize an expedition, and they would walk to join Lord Chaitanya at the time of the Chariot festival in Puri. And this made Lord Chaitanya's mother happy, because when the devotees came back from their Puri Yatra every year, they had a lot of news that they could share with Mother Sachi about her son and how he was doing and state of his health, etc., etc., etc. Shivananda Sain was a little wealthier than most of the devotees, so he sponsored the lodging in the overnight guest house. He paid the bill for the Patel motels. He would arrange for food and amenities and drinking stations. And one year, a dog began to follow along with a traveling pilgrimage. And Shivananda Sain, instead of disregarding or ignoring or overlooking the dog, he took it that the dog was there for a reason and that he should take care of it. So he supplied food for the dog. He maintained the dog. And in fact, one day they came to a river in Orissa, and the boatman refused to take the dog across. Sometimes you'll see signs, no dogs allowed. So this boatman did not allow dogs on his boat. And Shivananda was only able to persuade the boatman to take the dog across the river with them by paying several times the amount that he had paid for each human being. So he went out of his way and even spent an exorbitant amount of money so that the dog would continue to travel with them and he would continue to take care of the dog. That verse in the Antya-lila, first chapter, 22nd verse is Kukula nahi pahi bata suni duka haya kukura chayite dasa manusha paila. Now, between where they had crossed the river and Jagannath Puri, one day the servants of Shivananda Sain forgot to feed the dog, and the dog disappeared. The dog was nowhere to be seen. And when Shivananda Sain found out that the dog had not been fed that day and the dog had disappeared, he became extremely upset. He sent no less than 10 men out to comb the bushes and the surrounding countryside to see if they could find the dog and bring him back, feed him, and make amends for their negligence, for their neglect. And when the 10 men returned, and again, these could have very well been paid servants of his, so again, another expense. When they were unsuccessful in finding the dog, Shivananda Sain became very unhappy, and he refused to eat for the rest of the evening. So they continued on, and they finally arrived in Puri, and they went to get the darshan of Lord Chaitanya. And guess what? Because of that dog's association with Shivananda Sain, because of association with a pure devotee, and this is why Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if I have to take birth again, Janme Kita Hai, let me take birth as a dog or an insect in the family of devotees. Because what to speak of the devotee and what to speak of the members of his human family, even the cockroaches, even the mice, what to speak of the cats and the dogs and the various animals in and around the house of a Vaishnava, they're hearing the chanting of Hare Krishna, they're hearing the katha, the discussings of Krishna's pastimes, they're taking the prasadam, which are leftovers from the tables of devotees. So even the insect in the house of a devotee is so blessed. So where should, after having lost this dog out in the middle of nowhere on the trail several days out from Puri, where should they again run across this dog? But the dog, due to the mercy of Shivananda Sain, had become Krishna conscious. And when they met Lord Chaitanya, who should be at the feet of Lord Chaitanya but the dog? And what was going on? This is in the 29th verse of the first chapter of the Antya-lila. Prakash has joined us, and he's coming right up with the quotes as fast as I can throw them out there. Prashada nari kela sasya dena falana Rama Krishna hari kaha balena hasya. Lord Chaitanya was doing two things. There are two essential elements in devotional service, and they both have to do with the tongue. One is eating prasadam, and the other is vibrating the name, glories, and pastimes of Krishna. Sarada vijaja jitendriya tahika jive file visaya sagari tarmaji jivayati lo bhaya surimati take jete katina samsare. Before we eat, we say this prayer, which indicates that the tongue can be our biggest obstacle in the path of devotional service. It can be our biggest friend. If we use the tongue for eating prasadam and chanting the name of Krishna, then 60% of spiritual life is already achieved. So this dog was getting remnants of coconut pulp tossed to him by Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya simultaneously was exhorting the dog, chant the names of Krishna, chant the names of Brahma, chant the names of Hari, and in its own way, the dog was doing it. The dog was chanting Krishna, chanting Rama, chanting Hari, and taking the remnants of the green coconut pulp. Said the next day, Aradina keha tara dekana paila, sida deha pana kukura, vaikuntate jela. The dog was nowhere to be seen the following day. Why? Because he had left his body, and his original spiritual body departed for Vaikuntha, the spiritual kingdom. And in Vaikuntha, Doesn't matter what your spiritual liberated form is. There are peacocks there, there are dogs there, there are parrots there, there are obviously cows there, horses there. All the various species that we see in this material world are represented in their original spiritual forms in the spiritual world. There are also blades of grass there, there are insects, there are fish there. Everything is animate, everything is conscious. So there's no dead matter in the spiritual world. Even the clouds are conscious. And everyone's predicated on service to the Lord. So the clouds consciously protect the Lord from the heat of the sun. The blades of grass consciously soften the areas where the Lord is going to tread with his lotus-like feet. Whether you ascend to the spiritual world as a cow or as a monkey or as a dog or a blade of grass, you're going to be completely fulfilled because you're going to be right in the middle of the particular type and category of service that Krishna created you for. And of course, it goes without saying that there's no enmity between the living entities in the spiritual world. Here, there's enmity between the lion and the ox. The zebras or the gazelles or the deer, they come to the river because they have to get water. And it's often at the river that the predators hang out. They don't have to go here and there, wasting their energy by traveling over hill and dale to find their prey. The lions, the tigers, the cheetahs, the hyenas, they all know that everybody has to drink at least once a day. And so they hang out near the water holes, calculating that their prey, their food, sooner or later is going to have to come to them to drink. And so then the prey, the deer, the gazelle, the zebras, they come to drink, but they need water. There's nothing more precious, there's nothing more essential for life than water. But at the same time, you risk your life in order to get water. And so when the prey species come near to the watering hole, they're on high alert. They're looking this way and that way. They can hardly enjoy or relish their drinks of water because as soon as they get distracted and start to enjoy guzzling the water, that's the moment that the predator will choose to put on a burst of speed and try to bring them down. And also within the water, there are also crocodiles, alligators, which are just waiting below the surface to grab them and pull them in, as happened with Gajendra the elephant. And so being an animal in this material world is something you want to avoid at all costs. And the good news is that if you have any faith, if you see devotees and you think, oh, what they're doing is so nice. If you chant Hare Krishna in your home, or if you take prasadam at a Krishna festival, or what to speak if you do more, you're going to avoid the pitfall of having to take your next birth in the animal species. While it's perfectly glorious to have a form of an animal or an insect or a tree in the spiritual world or a cloud, it is the opposite, because this material world is a perverted reflection. If the spiritual world is the tree, if the spiritual world is reality, eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, then everything in this material world is a perversion of the ultimate reality of the spiritual world. And so the life of animals and insects and aquatics is not a happy life in this material world. It's a life full of fear and anxiety, and any pleasures that you get are attained, just like a nice cool drink of water, something that we take for granted even in this material world, but you cannot take that for granted if you're an animal. You are food. You are somebody else's lunch. Astani sahastanam aparani chatushvaram falguni tatamata jiva jivasa jivanam. Prakash, I don't know the exact verse, but it's in the first canto there somewhere, if you can find it. So the description we find now in the 10th canto, 13th chapter, 16th verse, the description of the spiritual world is as a place where there's no enmity, there's only amity, friendship, love, cooperation, harmony between all the various species. This is the verse. Yatra nasharga durira sahashrani migarya mitrani vajita vasha drutarata shanardikam. Vrindavan, the spiritual world, is the transcendental abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in Vrindavan, unlike in this material world, which is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, there's no hunger, there's no anger, there's no thirst. Though naturally inimical, both human beings and fierce animals live there together in transcendental friendship. In the Bible, it's also described as the peaceable kingdom, where the lion will lie down and eat straw with the ox. Sometimes meat eaters will say, well, I can't give up meat because, I just like the taste, and they incorrectly feel it makes them strong, and yada, 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 and yada. But when you point out to them that even in your Christian scriptures, even in your Bible, it's very clearly indicated that one entity will not be food for another entity. Living entities can drink water, they can get food, they can maintain families and relatives and love and friendship. All of it, of course, Krishna-centered, without any fear or without any anxiety whatsoever. The spiritual world is known as Vaikuntha, that place where there's no fear, where there's no anxiety, where there's no enmity. Not one living being is ever a threat to the livelihood, the happiness of another living being. So my question to those who eat meat is that if you believe this is your ultimate destination, if you believe that as a result of practicing your faith and your religion, you are going to end up in this ultimate perfect place called the spiritual world or the peaceable kingdom, if that's the goal and the destination, then why wouldn't you want to emulate that now? And let me take it a step further. Do you really think that you can shed blood, cause violence and suffering now, and at the same time be eligible to go to that peaceable kingdom? Don't you think that your current practices would be a disqualification? But even if you don't believe that, even if you don't believe that you're disqualified from entering the peaceable kingdom by your current violence and insensitivity, why wouldn't you want to live that way as much as possible now? You acknowledge that that is the perfect place, the perfect civilized ultimate destination of all living beings. It is well within your power to adopt the same sort of nourishment here that you would be consuming in the spiritual world. So why in the world wouldn't you do that? Even if you don't think it's an ethical consideration, why wouldn't you want to experience the peace, the harmony, the freedom from enmity now that you're going to enjoy when you go to the spiritual world? What possible objection could one have for that? In their friendly attitude, such as it was exhibited by Shivananda Sain, so many other devotees, Maharaj Yudhisthira was prohibited from entering the heavenly planets because there was a sign, no dogs allowed. And Maharaj Yudhisthira deferred. He said, well, I won't go to heaven if I can't take the dog with me. The devotees are equally and friendlily disposed to all living beings. And this is just simply a byproduct of their devotional service to the Lord. If in fact you say you are God conscious, you say you are serving the Lord, there should be symptoms of peace, tranquility, non-violence. Yashasti bhaktir bhagavatiya kinchana sarvagara tadastamaj haro abhakta sakuto mahadguna manoreti nasiti dahad bhatibhi. That's why it is asserted in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that only those who are attached to the lotus feet of the Supreme Father, who loves all living beings equally, only his devotees are full with all good qualities. Others may be peaceful for a while. Others may be vegetarian or vegan for a while. Others may be into permaculture or sustainability for a while. But their platform is the modes of material nature, which are always shifting from goodness to passion to ignorance. One is advised to avoid acting within the modes of material nature, but to act in devotional service to the Lord. Mam Chiyava Bacharane Bhakti Yoga Sadgunam Samatitya Tam Brahma Bhuya Kalpate. Only those who are fixed in the devotional service to the Lord are doing what they do with a different motivation than the modes of material nature. They're doing what they do out of love and affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that love will never abate. That love will never retreat. That love will never atrophy. It will only wax more and more and more and more. So only those who are on the foundation of pure love of God are the only ones who are completely trustworthy to take ultimately good care of all the living beings whom God has put into their charge. Now, there is favorable devotional service, and those who are serving the Lord favorably are friendly to all living entities, but that's not necessarily always the case for those who are serving the Lord unfavorably. Who knows the most classic case of someone who served the Lord unfavorably during the time of Lord Krishna's being on the planet, exhibiting his childhood pastimes? Yes, his name is Kamsa. Kamsa thought of Krishna constantly, but from the very beginning of Krishna's birth, Kamsa had only thought of Krishna insofar as Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna. When Kamsa was driving the chariot on the wedding day of his sister Devaki to Vasudeva, a voice out of the sky ominously said to Kamsa, "The 8th child of your sister will kill you." Kamsa was so much in bodily consciousness, he was so fixed on fruitive activities, that he was prepared to kill his sister on her own wedding day to save his own carcass. Fortunately, Vasudeva talked him out of it, but he put his sister and Vasudeva in prison, and not wanting to take any chances, he killed each and every child that came from the womb of Devaki. Of course, according to the Lord's divine arrangement, these were souls that had been cursed to come to earth, and being killed by Kamsa shortly after birth meant they didn't have to stay here very long, and so they went back to their celestial positions very, very quickly. There's always a sub-story in here. And so finally, Krishna appeared, and then he slipped out of the prison house of Kamsa, went to Vrindavan. Then Kamsa sent so many of his cronies, Putana, Agasura, Bakasura, Arisasura, protean wizards, lethal, Putana, and all the attempts to kill Krishna were unsuccessful. So Kamsa got more and more feverish, more and more worked up, more and more frustrated. His anxiety level, his blood pressure, his cholesterol kept climbing. The result of which was there was never a moment when Kamsa wasn't thinking of Krishna. He was in full Krishna consciousness, but he was, while working, while eating, while sleeping, you could say that he was Krishna conscious in every respect, but the Krishna consciousness that Kamsa had was not favorable, and with the result is that he was considered a demon, and he was very, very happy. His unfavorable Krishna consciousness brought him not a shred of happiness. That's because he thought of Krishna as his enemy. And Krishna loves Kamsa. Samaham sarvabhuteshu name dvesha ye bhajanti tu mam bhakta mai te teshu tapyaham. God loves all living beings, as we stated previously. But if we position ourselves in enmity as an enemy of Krishna, if we see Krishna as a threat to our material comfort and well-being, to our temporary lifestyle in this material world, then the result will be that we become inimical towards Krishna. So Krishna then is obliged, out of love, to deal with us differently. Kamsa's goal in life was not to serve Krishna, not to solve all the problems of material life and go back in his original spiritual form to the spiritual world where there's no anxiety. That, Kamsa missed all that. He simply wanted to enjoy as much as possible in his current life, and after life go to the higher planets. So in that sense, Kamsa did charitable works. He helped people out, but only for his own self-promotion. But throughout the scriptures, and especially in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says all this brouhaha concerning the heavenly planets is will of the wisp. It's good for nothing. It's a waste of time. It's like you see some beautiful flowers on a tree, but the flowers are poisonous. So similarly, all the delights of heaven that are mentioned, talked about, and promised through the Vedas, they're like poisonous fruits because we are not temporary. We're eternal. We're meant to go back to home, back to Godhead, where life is full of bliss and knowledge. And the result of practicing favorable devotional service is that one becomes happy. Unlike Kamsa, who became extremely unhappy and uncomfortable in all the affairs of his life. The devotee, while sitting, sleeping, walking, or eating, is always happy, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. Sukham anyantikam yatad. In the, 6th chapter, it's chapter on yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. Sukham anyantikam yatad. Sukha means happy. There's a devotee, a yogi who's attached to Krishna, is always happy. Buddhi gramatindriyam. Sukham anyantikam buddhi gramatindriyam. Vedi natunana. Stitas chalati tatvaraha. Even if the worst calamity, according to the materialist, thinks, what's the worst thing? Pandemic, cancer, loss of a loved one, bankruptcy, legal situations, the things that just horrify materialistic, fruitive people. And devotees, righteous people, don't get a pass on any of this. Krishna never promises that he won't get you into a jam, but he promises that because of your devotion and your steadfastness, you'll get out of the jam, and because of your good attitude during the jam, you'll come out twice as good as you went in before. So even in what would generally be considered in the worldly opinion to be the greatest catastrophe of health, finances, relationship, devotee still thinks of himself as the most fortunate. And they think of what has befallen them, a loss, financial setback, as a mere token of what reaction they should have had based on their past deeds. So in summation, the result of unfavorable devotional service is that one is always unhappy, like Kamsa. The result of favorable devotional service is that one is always happy, even under the most challenging of situations. In fact, a devotee is perfectly at home anywhere they are in the universe, in any situation, in any company. Devotees see the entire universe as paraphernalia for the Lord's service. Anashaktasya visham yataram upanya nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairaga uchate. Everything comes from the Lord. The Lord is spiritual. So everything that appears in this phenomenal world is nothing more or less than the energies of the Lord. And everything belongs to the Lord. Those who are devotionally aware see everything as the property of the Lord, and that reminds them of the Lord, and therefore they're never out of Krishna consciousness. After Krishna had gone to Mathura to kill Kamsa, and later went to Dwarka to be a king, sometimes Mother Yashoda would wander into his room, and there in the corner of the room would be his walking stick. Mother Yashoda would just be doing housework, dusting and cleaning, and she'd go in and see what dusting needed to be done in Krishna's room. She had a busy schedule. She had a lot to do. Maybe she had to prepare lunch for when the cowherd boys came back and so on. So she's on the clock, and she just kind of traipses into Krishna's room to do a little tidying up. and her eyes fall on Krishna's walking stick, leaning in against the corner of the room. And then she just like, she recalls everything to do with Krishna. The walking stick triggers all of these emotions. And as she thinks of Krishna, Krishna is with her. When you think of Krishna, Krishna is with you. And so there, in paralysis, stunned, unmoving, in a trance for who knows how much time passes, Mother Yashoda is in deep, deep samadhi, right there in the middle of her house, in the midst of her housework. She's totally off. She's gone to be with Krishna. And that's the effect, that a devotee sees everything as a property of Krishna. Everything reminds them of Krishna. And in this way, they pass their time in total absorption, always happy. For one who sees Krishna everywhere and who sees everything in the universe simply as paraphernalia for serving Krishna, it is said, Vishvam Purnam Sukhayate. The entire universe is a friendly place. The entire universe is comfortable. And everything in the entire universe triggers those feelings of bliss and knowledge and God consciousness. Finally, it is said here by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the comfortable position of a devotee can be established through the merciful process which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has delivered to us of vibrating our tongue by way of honoring and glorifying the holy name, form, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Lord, as well as taking prasadam, sanctified food, which has been offered to the Lord in love and devotion. Doing these two things and awakening one's devotional service, one becomes fixed in love of God, never disturbed by any reversal of fortune, and completely excited and enthused about transitioning at the end of this life back to home, back to Godhead, to that realm where all living beings live together in perfect peace and harmony without any fear, stress, or anxiety. Is that good? Thank you. Prashant has been following up everything with comments. Bhakta Caprice mentions here, he says, what I'm noticing is that Krishna Katha is so precious because there are always sub-stories, indeed, and those stories have their own lessons as well. The philosophy is brand new to me every day, always fresh. What a beautiful comment from Bhakta Caprice. Thank you so much. We have 22 comments. I can't see all the comments, but now I figured out a way to see who all is with us at the moment. And we thank you, Sanjay Yudha. Thanks for joining us. Chaitanya Mangala has joined us. Dira Das, Preeti Agarwal. Thank you. Preeti, Michelle, also, Marcia, and we've had with us from the very beginning, Jean. Gary Sun joined us. Aylin, thanks for being with us the whole time. Rupa Manjari, Anjali, Rakesh, and so many others. Anyway, thank you very much. We've kicked off a new week here. The body that you're seeing right now is not the same body you saw last week. Last week you saw a 73-year-old body. Now you're seeing a 74-year-old body. I hope it's not too much worse. I hope you can still stand to look at it. But remember, inside the body is a youthful peacock or llama or cowherd boy or cowherd girl. We are, each one of us, eternal, youthful servitors of the Lord. I think it was Oscar Wilde who said the tragedy of old age is not that you're old, but that you're young. So inside each and every one of us is an eternally youthful part and parcel of the Lord. We're sons of kings. We're daughters of kings. We're anointed with favor. We have the blood of champions running through our veins. And so I can't wait to see and hear from you about all the wonderful world-changing things that you do in your family, in your school, in your employment, and in your temple. So until we see each other again tomorrow, please be safe. Please wear masks and social distance, wash your hands, and of paramount importance, take prasadam and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Please join, please share, please comment. I'll answer all of your comments, and we'll be back tomorrow for Transcendental Tuesday.